Okay, now that you've got that down, I'm thinking that you may have written something along the lines of, maybe the witch is being so cruel because Edmund didn't show up with his siblings. Or maybe the witch is being so cruel because, let's go back to that chapter title, Aslan is near. Ding ding, if that's what you're thinking, because yes, I have a feeling she's being very cruel because she knows that her enemy, Aslan, is near. Let's keep going. While he was still chewing away, the first dwarf came back and announced that the sledge was ready. The White Witch rose and went out, ordering Edmund to go with her. The snow was again falling as they came into the courtyard, but she took no notice of that and made Edmund sit beside her on the sledge. But before they drove off, she called Maugrim, and he came bounding like an enormous dog to the side of the sledge. "Take with you the swiftest of your wolves and go at once to the house of the beavers," said the witch, "and kill whatever you find there. And if they are already gone, then make all speed to the stone table. But do not be seen. Wait for me there in hiding. I, meanwhile, must go many miles to the west before I find a place where I can drive across the river. You may overtake these humans before they reach the stone table. You will know what to do if you find them." "I hear and obey, O queen," growled the wolf, and immediately he shot away into the snow and darkness as quickly as a horse can gallop. In a few minutes he had called another wolf and was with him down on the dam and sniffing at the beaver's house. But of course they found it empty. It would have been a dreadful thing for the beavers and the children if the night had remained fine, for the wolves would then have been able to follow their trail, and 10 to 1 would have overtaken them before they had got to the cave. But now that the snow had begun again, the scent was cold, and even the footprints were covered up. Meanwhile, the dwarf whipped up the reindeer, and the witch and Edmund drove out under the archway and on and away into the darkness and the cold. This was a terrible journey for Edmund, who had no coat. Before they had been going 1/4 of an hour, of all front of him was covered with snow. He soon stopped trying to shake it off because as quickly as he did that, a new lot gathered, and he was so tired. Soon he was wet to the skin, and oh, how miserable he was. It didn't look now as if the witch intended to make him a king. All the things he had said to make himself believe that she was good and kind and that her side was really the right side sounded to him silly now. He would have given anything to meet the others at this moment, even Peter. The only way to comfort himself now was to try to believe that the whole thing was a dream and that he might wake up at any moment. And as they went on, hour after hour, it did come to seem like a dream. Okay, we need to stop here. These thoughts Edmund is having in this sledge, I'm wondering where they're coming from. But more so, I'm wondering, is there hope for Edmund? Do you think that his realization, this aha moment you might see here, that suddenly he goes, I'm not so sure the witch intended to make him a king. Is there hope for him? I want you to pause this video and write down, what do you think Edmund might do now that he's feeling this way? Okay, hopefully you jotted something down. I want you to hold on to that thought as we continue to read here. This lasted longer than I could describe, even if I wrote pages and pages about it. But I will skip on to the time when the snow had stopped, and the morning had come, and they were racing along in the daylight, and they still went on with no sound but the everlasting swish of the snow and the creaking of the reindeer's harness. And then at last the witch said, "What have we here? Stop!" And they did. How Edmund hoped she was going to say something about breakfast, but she had stopped for quite a different reason. A little way off at the foot of a tree sat a merry party. A squirrel and his wife with their children and 2 satyrs and a dwarf and an old dog fox, all on stools round a table. Edmund couldn't quite see what they were eating, but it smelled lovely, and there seemed to be decorations of holly, and he wasn't at all sure that he didn't see something like a plum pudding. At the moment when the sledge stopped, the fox, who was obviously the oldest person present, had just risen to its feet, holding a glass in its right paw as if it was going to say something. But when the whole party saw the sledge stopping, and who was in it, all the gaiety went out of their faces. The father squirrel stopped eating with his fork halfway to his mouth, and one of the satyrs stopped with its fork actually in its mouth. And the baby squirrel squeaked with terror. "What is the meaning of this?" asked the witch. Nobody answered. "Speak, vermin," she said again. "Or do you want my dwarf to find you a tongue with his whip? What is the meaning of all this gluttony, this waste, this self-indulgence? Where did you get all these things?" Oh, everyone stop. Think. Where did they get these things? Are you connecting? I hope you're connecting from a chapter previous here. Let's keep going. "Please, your majesty," said the fox, "we were given them, and if I might make so bold as to drink your majesty's very good—" "Who gave them to you?" said the witch. "Father Christmas," stammered the fox. "What?" roared the witch, springing from the sledge and taking a few strides nearer to the terrified animals. "He has not been here. He cannot have been here. How dare you? But no! Say you've been lying, and you shall even now be forgiven." Okay, let's stop again. Why is she acting this way? What is her motivation to making her act this way? What do you think? I'm hoping that you're thinking about the same thing we thought at the beginning of the chapter. She's becoming more anxious and more angry and more upset because she knows that Aslan is near. And she knows that these gifts have come from Father Christmas. We talked about this in the previous chapter. If Father Christmas is coming, that must mean that Christmas is near, and that must mean what? Let's keep going. At that moment, one of the young squirrels lost its head completely. He has, it squeaked, beating its little spoon on the table. Edmund saw the witch bite her lips so that a drop of blood appeared on her white cheek. Then she raised her wand. "Oh, don't, please don't!" shouted Edmund. But even while he was shouting, she had waved her hand, and instantly, where the merry party had been, there were only statues of creatures. Okay, we need to stop, and I need you to pause this video. I want you to write down, what does this show about Edmund? Him going, "Oh no, stop, don't turn them into stone." What does this show about Edmund? Pause and write that down. Okay, I hope we're starting to see maybe a different side of Edmund here. A side that makes me go back to this question we talked about before. Is there hope for Edmund? Does he have a heart? Let's keep going. One with its stone fork fixed forever, halfway to its stone mouth, seated round a stone table on which there were stone plates and a stone plum pudding. "As for you," said the witch, giving Edmund a stunning blow on the face as she remounted the sledge, "let that teach you to ask favor for spies and traitors. Drive on!" Edmund, for the first time in this story, this is big, felt sorry for someone besides himself. It seemed so pitiful to think of those little stone figures sitting there all the silent days and all the dark nights, year after year, till the moss grew on them, and at last even their faces crumbled away. Okay, guys, it looks like Edmund's got a little bit of a heartbeat in there. Now they were steadily racing on again, and soon Edmund noticed that the snow which splashed against them as they rushed through it was much wetter than it had been all last night. At the same time, he noticed that he was feeling much less cold. It was also becoming foggy. In fact, every minute it grew foggier and warmer. Why, everyone? Why is this happening? And the sledge was not running nearly as well as it had been running up till now. At first he thought this was because the reindeer were tired, but soon he saw that the reason couldn't be the real reason. The sledge jerked and skidded and kept on jolting, as if it had struck against stones. And however the dwarf whipped the poor reindeer, the sledge went slower and slower. There also seemed to be a curious noise all round them, but the noise of their driving and jolting, and the dwarf shouting at the reindeer prevented Edmund from hearing what it was until suddenly, aha moment, the sledge stuck so fast that it wouldn't go on at all, when what happened there was a moment's silence. And in that silence Edmund could at last listen to the other noise properly. A strange, sweet, rustling chatter noise, and yet not so strange, for he'd heard it before if only he could remember where. Do you guys know? Can you make a prediction? Can you maybe even infer? What is this noise? Then all at once he did remember. It was the noise of running water. Were you right? Running water. All round them, out of sight, there were streams chattering, murmuring, bubbling, splashing, and even in the distance roaring, and his heart gave a great leap, though he hardly knew why. When he realized that the frost was over and much nearer, there was a drip, drip, drip from the branches of all the trees. And then, as he looked at one tree, he saw a great load of snow slide off it. And for the first time since he had entered Narnia, he saw the dark green of a fir tree. But he hadn't time to listen or watch any longer, for the witch said, "Don't sit staring, fool! Get out and help!" And of course, Edmund had to obey. Why? Why does he have to obey her? Are you thinking in your head, well, Miss Calaveras, if he doesn't obey her, she'll just turn him into stone? You're right. And that makes me think, is he forever trapped? Is there a way for him to get out? Just think about that. He stepped out into the snow, but it was really only slush by now, and began helping the dwarf to get the sledge out of the muddy hole it had gotten into. They got it out in the end, and by being very cruel to the reindeer, the dwarf managed to get it on the move again, and they drove a little further. And now the snow was really melting in earnest, and patches of green grass were beginning to appear in every direction. Unless you have looked at a world of snow as long as Edmund had been looking at it, you will hardly be able to imagine what a relief those green patches were after the endless white. Then the sledge stopped again. "It's no good, your majesty," said the dwarf. "We can't sledge in this thaw." "Then we must walk," said the witch. "We shall never overtake them walking," growled the dwarf, "not with the start they've got." "Are you my counselor or my slave?" said the witch. "Do as you're told. Tie the hands of the human creature behind it and keep hold of the end of the rope. And take your whip and cut the harness of the reindeer. They'll find their own way home." The dwarf obeyed, and in a few minutes Edmund found himself being forced to walk as fast as he could with his hands tied behind him. He kept on slipping in the slush and mud and wet grass, and every time he slipped, the dwarf gave him a curse and sometimes a flick with the whip. The witch walked behind the dwarf and kept on saying, "Faster, faster!" Every moment the patches of green grew bigger and the patches of snow grew smaller. Okay, guys, for the next 2 pages while I'm reading, I want you to write down on your sheet of paper 3 words that you can collect that describe the setting right now. 3 words. Every moment, more and more of the trees shook off their robes of snow. Soon, wherever you looked, instead of white shapes you saw, the dark green of firs, or the black, prickly branches of bare oaks and beeches and elms. Then the mist turned from white to gold, and presently cleared away altogether. Shafts of delicious sunlight struck down onto the forest floor, and overhead you could see a blue sky between the treetops. Soon there were more wonderful things happening. Ooh. Coming suddenly round a corner into a glade of silver birch trees, Edmund saw the ground covered in all directions with little yellow flowers, celandines. The noise of water grew louder. Presently they actually crossed a stream. Beyond it they found snowdrops growing. "Mind your own business," said the dwarf when he saw that Edmund had turned his head to look at them, and he gave the rope a vicious jerk. But of course this didn't prevent Edmund from seeing. Only 5 minutes later he noticed a dozen crocuses growing round the foot of an old tree, gold and purple and white. Then came a sound even more delicious than the sound of water. Close beside the path they were following a bird suddenly chirped from the branch of a tree. It was answered by the chuckle of another bird a little further off, and then, as if that had been a signal, there was chattering and chirruping in every direction, and then a moment of full song. And within 5 minutes the whole wood was ringing with birds, music, and wherever Edmund's eyes turned he saw birds alighting on branches, or sailing overhead, or chasing one another, or having their little quarrels, or tidying up their feathers with their beaks. "Faster, faster!" said the witch. There was no trace of the fog now. The sky became bluer and bluer, and now there were white clouds hurrying across it from time to time. In the wide glades there were primroses. A light breeze sprang up which scattered drops of moisture from the swaying branches and carried cool, delicious scents against the faces of the travelers. The trees began to come fully alive. Are you guys noticing as we're trekking and they're walking further and further? What are you noticing more and more of? I hope that you're noticing more signs of spring. And I hope that that's making you think about our chapter title. The larches and birches were covered with green, the laburnums with gold. Soon the beech trees had put forth their delicate transparent leaves. As the travelers walked under them, the light also became green. A bee buzzed across their path. "This is no thaw," said the dwarf, suddenly stopping. "This is spring. What are we to do? Your winter has been destroyed, I tell you. This is Aslan's doing." "If either of you mentions that name again," said the witch, "he shall instantly be killed." Wow. Okay, I want you to look back at those 3 words that you collected. Hopefully you collected 3 words or phrases that describe the setting on the past couple pages. And maybe if you're looking at those words, you might notice that a lot of them have to do with describing spring. And like I said, that takes me right back to this chapter title, Aslan is Nearer. And this setting is changing, and it's making me feel good. I hope it's making you feel good. But my last question for you to ponder is, if the setting makes us feel good, why does it not make the witch feel good? That's my final thought I'd like you to wonder about. Why does she not feel good about this? All right. Thank you for following along on this chapter adventure. You can stop the video, and then you're going to go back to your Canvas page, and you are going to answer the response question in the Writing About Reading assignment. Good luck.